Hello everyone, I did my topic paper on school-wide positive behavior intervention supports, or school-wide PBIS, and I wasn't really sure where I was going to go with it. I was just looking to see what prevents it from being effective, what makes it effective. My school is in the very early stages of trying to implement PBIS, and I thought that, if I had some information, I could be of more help in that process. So what I discovered was how it links with behavioral RTI, which was interesting to me, and I thought, this is something I could be effective with, that special educators could be involved with. School-wide positive behavior intervention supports are multi-tiered system of supports, and so is RTI. They both fall under that structure. So the first tier for all students, think about universal design for learning, whether it's academically, which we usually think of for universal design of learning, or school-wide PBIS is providing a universal to all students program for behavior in the first tier. The third tier results in more individualized interventions and often special education eligibility, but it's the second tier where the data collection should be occurring as well as interventions based on that data, and this is where many schools are falling short of school-wide PBIS. School-wide PBIS is based on positive, preventative behavioral support. Its fundamental basis is teaching appropriate behavior, modeling it, rewarding students who exhibit it, and thus interventions are positive rather than punitive, and that we know about PBIS. But what about the students who do not respond to the first tier of PBIS? Well, they move to tier 2. How do we measure the need for them to receive more specific interventions at tier 2? What's the data that causes that to happen? We know how it happens academically, but what about behaviorally? Well, office discipline referrals is the most commonly used form of data for that. There are other screening tools that some schools have used, like a miniature BASC. They've used other behavior rating scales to assess their whole student body. I read about some problems with that. There are students who showed that they needed intervention, but they weren't showing the behaviors. Office referrals, teacher requests, that can have to do with the management style of the teacher as well. So how should we choose interventions if we put a student in tier 2? Well, typically, the way it's done in tier 2 is a prescribed few, sometimes 2 or 3, system or school-suggested evidence-based interventions that are easy to be implemented across all different environments. So check-in, check-out is the most popular one, most commonly used one. Behavior education programs, social skills training. There are quite a few more, but usually schools tell teachers in tier 2, here's a few that you just need to try with all students. So something's missing from that. PBIS is based on ABA philosophies of behavior intervention. So tier 2 PBIS interventions should be joined with behavioral RTI at that point. They need to be looking at more specific data on those students. Teachers can conduct a very condensed version of an FBA. You can have a pretty simple conversation with the teacher and say, tell me where this is happening, when this is happening, and sorry about the interruption. Simple questions and that discussion with the RTI team to create a hypothesis for the function of the behavior and some appropriate interventions. Thus, response or failure to respond to interventions are valid indicators of the need to move to tier 3 and or potential special education services. So I would sort of liken that to if a child was having trouble with word problems, a very common issue students around 3rd grade start to hit. A teacher doesn't need to do a whole lot of assessment to determine that the issue here is not in calculation or understanding mathematical functions. The issue is reading and understanding the language of what's being asked. That's just a simple example, but academically it's not very hard for a teacher to determine what areas they need to focus on in RTI tier 2. Behaviorally, that's just not occurring for the most part. It's just been very general interventions. And when that happens, you might be giving an intervention that's actually reinforcing a problematic behavior. Check in, check out, for example. What if that student is motivated to continue those problematic behaviors by the opportunity to continue to see that special person they want to see? Just an example, but This is why I think, and I made this graphic to show that I included in the handout, that adding determination of function to this continuum of moving through the tiers is very important. So if at school-wide PBIS, Tier 1, the school creates the matrix of expected behavior and teaches those behaviors. Students are rewarded exhibiting those behaviors through a school-wide commodity. Just like RTI Tier 1 is a universal design for learners, it's employed to ensure all the students have maximum access to learning. When a student doesn't respond to Tier 1, they're identified, and what data identifies them? Well, with academic RTI, there's universal screeners, standardized testing, poor academic performance, and they get a focus on what they need to work on. With behavioral RTI / PBIS, which at this point should be the same thing, office disciplinary referrals, teacher concerns, in some cases behavioral screeners, that's what's used to move a student to Tier 2, and that's what they use to determine how to intervene. I think if we determine the function of the behavior, then when they move the behavioral into Tier 2, the behavioral interventions are based on the function of the behavior. And just like the academic interventions are based on the area assessed need. And then you all know what happens from Tier 2. In the majority of cases, it should be effective. In some, it is not. And it's used not just to determine that a child needs more interventions. Sometimes it's used to determine that a child has a disability, like a learning disability academically. Well, failure to respond to interventions can have a student identified behaviorally as being problematic. This classroom that I'm in is full of students who did not respond to interventions, and now they're with me in Tier 4 or 7. So, but just saying that sometimes if those interventions have been appropriate earlier, they might not have gotten to this point, and that's why I guess my heart kind of fell into this area. So my handout gives you this graphic, but it also has a link to the PBIS website. If you're not familiar with PBIS, the Department of Education established it to look at this area. They thought it was that significant, which is why I did find a lot of research addressing the effectiveness of it, and found this particular area where schools seem to be failing. And I think another thing that I found, one of the big areas that stops PBIS from being effective is teacher buy-in and the morale about it, and them just feeling they're stretched too much with too many different programs already. And I know in the schools I've worked in, I've known about PBIS, heard about PBIS, and I've known about RTI, and I've heard teachers unhappy about both initiatives, not that that's justified, but they didn't see that they go together, that school-wide PBIS Tier 1 is behavioral Tier 1 RTI. And I would hope that administrators could approach it that way and help teachers understand that this is not they're not competing initiatives. They're very compatible and should be handled the same way. So I hope you got something out of that, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing all of your topics as well, and hope you all get a lot of this class and that I see a lot of you around soon.